Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday the 21st of June for our parish council meeting here in the lovely Village Hall. We are expecting one or two more to be attending, but please don't let them disturb the agenda. Parishioners' question time. Helen, have we had any feedback at all?
I think there was one question that came in about metals that was sort of came in late.
Yeah. So Ingrid
answered that.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll respond to that if you like.
thanks, Ian. I mean, bless her, I know she comments frequently, but it all seems to be a little bit, you know, I'm not sure whether she's fully aware of what we're trying to do, so maybe it would be a good idea, Ingrid, if you're tuning in tonight, for Ian to maybe knock on the door and have a distance for social
Where does she say?
conversation. It's Church Lane, I believe.
It's right at the bottom of Shuts on the V,
on the corner.
right on that corner.
Oh, right.
Near, across from the Gadsby's.
Yes,
Yeah.
but right on the V effectively.
Right, okay.
But I can also publish your plan on the blog as well.
Well,
That's a very fulsome plan, if she has time.
Okay. So, Ian, thanks for doing that.
Yes.
Because I know there's been some amazing developments in getting this right, with conversations with Bucks and Aylesbury and goodness knows what, so, okay. Anything else that's come through, Helen, that you're aware of? Or?
Nothing else has come through today.
I mean, just feedback from the last meeting, the audio is not perfect in this room, so when speaking, that's the mic on the tripod there, so we can sort of slightly project voices towards the mic.
Shall we do testing? 1, 2, 3, Anthony, you are very good there. Just let me know if you are by email. Okay, apologies for absence. I think at the moment the only person missing is Jules Witcher.
Yeah, Julie's giving me her apologies.
Okay, brilliant. So everyone else is here. Declarations of interest, as usual, in accordance with sections 33 and 235 of the Localism Act. Councillors that declare any personal, prejudicial or pecuniary interest pertaining to the agenda. None. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of Monday the 17th of May. Do I have somebody to propose?
Yeah, fine.
Second and second. Thank you. Matters arising, Helen.
So I'm just going back to apologies. Robert did say that he may or may not be here, so I'm guessing by his absence he isn't here, so I just remembered that.
I think that's understandable because having read his finance report, I think there were about 14 words on it, which is brilliant.
So I'll just jot down Robert for apologies as well.
Yeah.
Right, summarising. So I think the first action was on me to contact DCKB this for payroll. I gave them a call today, I'm just waiting for them to call me back, so that's sort of work in progress. The next one is regarding registering the bell as an asset of community value. So I think everyone's aware that our first application was not successful, so we've resubmitted a second application with further evidence, and that's been dealt with. I think they've got 8 weeks to respond to us, so I've had a letter confirming they received it, and they'll respond in 8 weeks.
And I understand without predetermination that we stand a much better chance of that going through now, as a result of the evidence that actually Ian brought together and helped by Angela. And it was a really good piece of work that was responded to me by one of my councillors saying, spot on and absolutely. So let's see. Okay.
Right, the next action was council annual report. John Lewis to send to Angela and Ian before distributing to wider audience.
So that was done, in fact it was sent to everybody and is now on the website.
The next one was action on Keep to investigate new equipment for the live streaming of the meetings.
So I've been doing bits and pieces of research to try and avoid or come up with a simple solution. There are some very expensive solutions that cost about £1,000. That's a central gizmo in the middle which zooms in on the speaker and is meant to target the microphone. But for £1,000, it's a lot of money, and the the reviews have not been universal. I think there's still a problem slightly with the acoustics in this room regardless. I've also looked at another solution where we had mics, on each desk, so that we need about 6 mics and then get a little mixer. That's would probably cost a couple of hundred, and that, the audio is one of the problems, and then maybe upgrading the camera for with another 100, but that's likely to be something. If that went ahead, if I proposed that, that would be 300. So in principle, just to get some feedback, so I don't sort of waste too much time, how do people feel about if it was sort of £300?
Well, personally, frankly, I think that's pretty, if I can use the word cheap, for that sort of equipment to get the quality we need. And I would be suggesting we should be looking to maybe put a budget in place for you to mess around with, sort of say 500 quid. And let's see what we can get, because even at that level, if we can improve mainly the sound issues, I think we should be able to do a good.
Yeah, I mean, having the mics close up will get over some of the acoustics.
Thoughts?
Yeah. If we agree to this as a regular occurrence.
Can we, councillors, would hand £500 budget? Okay. Thank you. Is that okay then?
Yeah, thank you. And now, are we skipping, which is the meeting we normally have a gap, is it August?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have one, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll try and work on that ahead of the next meeting.
Brilliant. Helen?
So the next action point was regarding the Haybrooks land. Further discussion needed with Rosedale and Haybrooks regarding the footpath fencing and barbed wire. That was an action on John Lewis to contact Rosedale.
So I wrote to Rose again regarding the estimate she had promised to get for us for the footpath widening work, and I've yet to hear back from her. I will keep on trying.
I think it's important we keep the pressure on. Yeah. We can't. It's too important to a lot of the people who live in the village and visit the village. And if we're really, going to support Anthony in his activities and work with footpaths, I think it's a bit of an anathema that we don't see this through, one way or the other. Is that okay? Okay, thank you.
And then the final one, regarding the email received from Jay Gibson, where a lorry blocked a tree branch onto his car by his property, and Ian and Paul were going to have a look at the area.
I did look into this. The maintenance of the hedge is the current tenant's task, and I've been to see Perry on 2 occasions, and he's promised faithfully that he would get out of it. I went to see him on the 20th of May, and again on the 26th, and I've had another look just this evening, not knowing what has been done. I've even offered to come and give him a hand to remove some of the bigger stuff, if we could go down to the allotment and be on the whole back. So I'm still waiting. I should keep on this case.
Yeah, please. Please, thanks, Ian. Okay, anything else, Helen?
No, that was the last action.
I think we just need to say thank you as well on I'm not sure whether it's an action, but sort of Paul and the priorities for Count Parsley, which you've done.
Yes, I've supplied a map marked to Colin Wolford, that went and decided. I think there's been some people who've been screwing today.
They've redone the entrances to the village as well, looks really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've
Okay.
got a lot to do here.
I agree, thank you though.
Can I just say, firstly, I think we've very good Matt and
Brilliant.
good, well done Ian on that.
Yeah.
Apologies for coming slightly late to the meeting, and you've probably picked up correspondence already. But,
Yeah, and
we did have a letter or an email, we covered that.
Yeah,
So I'll ask
I've
you
seen
that.
it, bring that.
Yeah.
And I think the point to make for those that aren't aware, that we wanted to wait until the co-past had gone over, because in the past, it had been butchered by the council, but on this occasion, now it's gone over, it's ready for the first meter to come down, so I think the timing's going into some sort of sync, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I might have to strip the bit outside my house because I actually can't see the traffic coming down the road.
What is a high percentage of the population of Chearsley look after the bit outside the house? So it's about 20% of the verges are actually maintained by the parishioners, which is great news actually.
Yeah. Excellent.
So yes, in fact, we'll put you down for that, Pete.
So my learned colleague is not fed up with the meetings, he's going to chair the clerk in Ashenden now.
Oh, right.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's matters arising, is it?
Yeah.
Cool. So Paul, over to planning.
Right, okay, we've got one which is listed here, which will be slightly confusing to everybody, which is says Fairview Cottage, which is how the application went, but in fact, it's the building which was put up in the garden of Fairview Cottage, which is Laneswood House. We carried out a site visit and reviewed the application in detail. And there are quite a number of points that will be raised and submitted tomorrow. But just to cover some of the key points, firstly, the planning notice has not been displayed during the whole period of the planning, which obviously is contrary to requirements. We had, as a council, initial concerns over the development of the site and to put a residential building there in the first place, and we considered it to be overdevelopment and hence opposed the application. The application was approved, and in fact the house was subsequently extended by an amended application, and the parish council now consider that any additional buildings on that site are a continuation of the overdevelopment of the site. It is in the conservation area which we're trying to protect. The building is supposed to be housing motorbike and some cycles, but it's 2.45 metres high, which is pretty excessive, and as a result of that, it does have a negative impact on the views from the people living as the householders next door. It comes under our view the term of development creep. And as a result of that, the notification tomorrow will be to oppose the application. Not listed on the agenda, but I should also mention that the application for the longhouse, the extension of the longhouse, was approved, but the planning department, in doing so, actually included quite a major error in their conclusions. This isn't a sort of factual opinion, it's a factual error which is quite significant and will have a fairly negative impact on one of the listed buildings in the community. As a result of that, we alerted the Chief Planning Officer and very pleased that they've made a very speedy response to investigate, and the matter is currently under investigation. For good order and also for sort of transparency purposes, we copied our correspondence to the Chief Planning Officer, to both the owners of the longhouse who submitted the application and the owners of West End Cottage that would be negatively affected by it. So that matter is ongoing.
Good to see them responding tonight so positively.
Yes, they're very speedy.
Yeah.
So that concludes planning matters.
Cool, well done, brilliant. Okay, no, so that's only we do. Okay, correspondence. Any correspondence?
I'm not aware of anything.
No, I don't think, apart from the Ingrid note.
Yeah, the one that came this evening.
Yeah, the only correspondence or interaction I've had is with Underwood, and they were requesting a load of our SID, and which I've been down there, it's installed on their road. So we'll do a couple of weeks of data collection for them, and then bring it back, give them the data, bring it back. And also the request from Cunnington, again asking how we funded the SID, what we did to mount the posts, because they want to go forward with an application. So I just gave them all the detail and all the information. I think I copied you.
That sort of leads me to the question then, Keith, where are we with the purchase of the second SID? We've talked about quite a few times, haven't we?
We have, but we have not had a formal proposal. I can produce a formal proposal with costs. I mean, what I've been doing is looking at the costs and efficiency of having it, if it was a GPRS or as an internet connection on it and with a solar panel. Unfortunately, it's quite a bit more expensive. It would be about 5,200, and I'm not convinced that.
Sunshines very much.
Sorry.
I'm not convinced the sunshines very much.
Well, not this week, that's for sure. So I guess the action on these is to put forward a formal proposal. We've got 3 mounting, we've got 4 posts, 3 and 4 mounting brackets that we can easily sustain. Another one, I would think. So if, what I'd say is if people, if the council are agreed in principle, because I think it would cost approximately, let's say, £3,000, okay? It might be slightly cheaper than that. I think the actual SID itself is 2,000, another spare battery, 150, but say maybe 2.5 hours for a basic battery operated option. If the council are happy in principle with that, I will put forward a more detailed proposal covering the basic SID battery, and then some words around whether we should really try and go for a more expensive option, or we'll just leave it for now and go with the base option. It's not that much effort. I have to maintain it every week, charge the battery up, but that only takes me, download the data, then it takes me about 10 minutes.
So do you think it's worth bringing proposals to the table to have a look at? Yeah, a couple of options.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll do that. Thank you for prompting me on that.
I get the general impression as well by talking to people locally, they really value what we've done so far.
It does appear to make a difference when it's there to when it's not there. People do see it. Of course, you get the extreme minority who don't pay any regard.
Yeah.
But in the main, most people look at it, when it flashes up, I can hear them when it's outside my house, that they slow down.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't realise I was going too fast.
Yeah.
And we slow down. So I think it's generally a positive education thing.
I agree. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Finance we've talked about. Thank you, Robert, if you're looking in. Reports from councillors attending meetings and outside organisations. Any reports at all this time?
So I can talk about the freight.
I was just going to actually let me check that. I think that's good news that you've had from that.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things. One, there was a meeting of the freight group. So this is the Hackney Mosden Community Board Freight Working Group, which I chair. And we had a meeting on the 8th of June. It was one of our normal meetings. The agenda was as much as it has been previous meetings. There was some progress, and there were some areas where we're still waiting on progress. One of the latter, where we're waiting on progress, relates to making contact with the planning authorities to see what can be done in terms of ensuring that traffic plans are a mandatory part of any planning consent. They do exist. In fact, one everybody saw the application for the surgery in Long Crendon. Such a traffic movement plan was included with that, I guess voluntarily. So that was good, but I don't see why that sort of approach shouldn't be standard. And it strikes me as being one method at least of reducing heavy traffic in areas where it shouldn't be. So that's a significant point. There are a number of other areas of activity which I won't go into. The main point I wanted to say about related to the definition of traffic control zones. So this is a large part of the work. It was started by Graham Hillary as part of the Austin Freight project work. We are now working in combination with Graham as a single project, and we have now got as far as more or less agreed that there will be or we will aim for, we can't guarantee it will materialise, but we will aim for a single zone covering what we call the central area, which is the fairly large triangle bordered by the A41 in the north, the 4011 Bicester Tame Road in the west, and the 418 Tame Aylesbury Road in the southeast. That triangle is a fairly natural area from which you can make an effort to exclude all heavy vehicles that don't have reason to be there. You can't exclude traffic that's either based within that zone or is delivering within the zone, obviously, but there's ample evidence that lots of traffic, heavy traffic, still uses shortcuts through the lanes rather than going around the outside. So we would aim to have that as one of the zones. The other decisions we made was that firstly, the area to the north of the A41, which was a potential zone, we are not going to try and do anything about it at the moment, simply because it is flooded with HS2 east-west rail traffic, and everybody agreed that it's just pointless to try and do anything in that area for the time being. Another area to the south of the 418, which includes primarily Haddon, we think is a potential, but the situation in Haddon isn't straightforward. And we've been in contact with Haddon Parish Council, David Truesdale there, and agreed that we need to look at a sort of a bits and pieces approach within Haddon, and David's got some thoughts on that. So we will be meeting with him week after next, I think it is, to discuss with him what he thinks is an appropriate approach for us to take. So we'll try for a joint approach between Haddon and the freight group. And the last area worth mentioning is to the west of the B4011, so that's to the west of the Bicester Tame Road. Now, there is a relatively small part of that area that's within Buckinghamshire, and there's no natural boundary. I mean, you could say the M40 is a boundary, but there's no junction, so the M40 is kind of like a tunnel through that you can ignore in a sense. So we could just sort of aim for an exclusion zone just within the Buckinghamshire part of that area, but that would mean some signs saying no freight traffic kind of on the country lanes in the middle of nowhere. Some of them are. So our planned approach on that one is for Graham Hillary. He is going to make contact with some people he knows in Oxfordshire, and we'll see if Oxfordshire have got any interest in doing some joint work and coming up with a zone which covers part of their county, part of Buckinghamshire, with you can then identify some appropriate roads, main roads. So quite a lot of activity there, and the objective is firstly to get agreement on what we want to shoot for, and then once we can all agree with the parish councils and the community in general, then the second and probably more difficult part is actually getting these things implemented and then figuring out how you're going to enforce them. So it's going to be a long road, but I think we're making a fairly positive start. The other bit of news on this whole story is that as a result of the reconfiguration of the way the community boards work after the election, new council is in place, the proposal has been to reduce the number of working groups, certainly in Hannon and Boston Community Board. I assume in the others as well, so I think they're looking for uniformity across the county. And the result of that would be that the freight subgroup would no longer exist. And there was a suggestion that Welly's work could be covered by a transport group, which is a group that probably will continue.
Taken into the corporate environment of.
Yes, that's right, yeah. So I wasn't impressed with that as a suggestion, and been in correspondence with the people that run the community board and others. And we had a discussion this morning on the subject, and it looks now as if we found a way through whereby the group will continue to operate, much as it does at the moment, with the same remit as a sort of a special group of the community board. So Elaine's boss, Marco, who seems to have a strong voice in these things, was in agreement with it. And there was a lady, Suzanne, somebody, sorry, I should remember her name, I think something to do with the transport group, where she was content with what we came up with. And it will now have to go to the community board for the next. But I think with recommendations from those people, we can expect it will be agreed.
And chairman will be.
And chairman will be proposed as myself, so that we can continue with the work much as we have been. Importantly, Graham is also present, and Graham spoke strongly about the need to carry on the work of the group, and the fact that he is now working with the group. The separate group doesn't exist anymore. We've already agreed that we will combine the two. So we're getting some focus, and I think it's going to be quite a powerful vehicle for getting things moving. Well done.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm so pleased, because my views are well known outside of this room about this, and I think John has brought to this group initially, concurrently, a focus they've never had, and certainly not to the detail and the level of detail that you brought to it. So it would have been anathema to me if you hadn't been heading that up in whatever form it took. So I think we're all really pleased about that. Quite apart from the fact you live in Chearsley and you're part of the parish council, and the wider Bucks is going to benefit.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I think that probably concludes that section. Any subcommittee decisions for ratification? I don't think we've got anything on that front.
There is one thing. Let me just ask, John, did you plan to talk about the stop at all this evening?
I was very briefly.
Do you mind if I pick it up now and then you interject with whatever you're going to say? So you'll be aware that we have sorry, were you going to say anything? I should have asked you as well. We have it's not even a subgroup really, but I'm going to claim that it can talk under this heading. It's a project that's being led by
Derek.
Derek.
Hello, Derek.
Sorry, Derek, I didn't know you were there. Being led by Derek Allen, and John's involved, Ian's involved, I'm involved, Paul and Nick's come along occasionally.
Yeah.
And
I'll be coming along next time if he lends me his waivers.
Oh, yes.
I wasn't to wear waivers.
It's all sorted. Quite like and trade.
Good options.
So we've been doing quite a lot of work on working out what the restoration would involve and how we would get it done. And we've pretty much got some conclusions now. And as part of that work, Derek has been writing off to contractors for quotations on getting the work done. We had some preliminary estimates. We needed some changes to those. We weren't quite happy with some aspects of them. Derek went back for requotes. And I thought that's as far as we were going to be reporting this evening, except the quotation arrived at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. So I quickly pushed the numbers into the sort of spreadsheet tracker that I've been running. And what I'd like to propose with everyone's agreement is to, for us to allocate some funding for this work to be done so that we can get on and engage these contractors as soon as possible. Now I say, if you don't mind, because we're not talking trivial sums here. The total cost, as best I can see at the moment, is a little over £15,000. That includes, quickly going down the list, clearance of the bank behind the stockhall, laying some stone gabions to keep the whole thing in place, clearing the silt from the pond, which a working group will be engaged on later this week, courtesy of Paul's Waders.
For the plants, not the silk.
We're having the pipes from the drainage system cleared out by Bucks Council, TFB. That won't cost us anything, they're doing that as part of their drainage clearance work. Some major work on the brickwork, both around and under the stockhall, including the concrete slab that the pump stands on and next to it. Putting some granite sets just along the edge of the stockhall. Perhaps putting the original pump back, which we've already got, some allocation for that. Some education as to around the village as to what we're doing, and some returfing work. That's broadly the scope of the contract, of the work. And that's what's covered within the £15,000. There's also a bit of contingency in there. That figure is more than the quotation. I've taken the liberty of putting 15% contingency on one or two items where the contractor said they need to agree the price on site once they know exactly what work involves. So you can be sure the price will go up.
I think it's worthwhile pointing out that, the contract that is down to the building work, which is, almost a given for other parts of the village anyway. Each time we do it, it's an £8,000 or £10,000 project.
Yes.
Here, I couldn't quite, I've only just received this 720, but I couldn't quite work out why it's 5,000 on the left-hand column and 2 on the next, but I'm guessing the 2 includes something else, or is it excludes?
Yeah, there's that spreadsheet mining talking about that.
But I'm not sure where it came from.
Yeah, probably was. So the curbing, we've got two aspects to the curbing. There's a short length, about 18 metres, that's got to be put in place just along the edge of the stockhall, to make sure we don't get run off into the stockhall from the lane. But then what we'd also like to do is to extend that from the stockhall down to the existing curbing opposite Bottom Orchard. That's a much longer length. And as far as I can judge, it's doing some rough estimates, we're talking about £2,000 for the former, £2,000, and somewhere in the region of another 8,000 for the longer length down to Church Lane. So the figure of 15,000 that I just mentioned includes the 2,000 by the stockhall, but it doesn't include the further 8,000 if we decide to do that.
But that's not really Stockwell.
It's not really Stockwell, no, that's right. So that's the work, and if we're going to proceed with it, the Parish Council really needs to agree to expenditure I would propose of 16,000 ceiling to give us a bit of headway. Prices do move a bit, although I said there is a bit of contingency in there. And that would then enable us to proceed. I have had a look at the budget, because you can't just magic £15,000 out of nowhere. And looking down it, I can see areas where we can probably find £15,000. The largest part would be £10,000 taken from the HCI junction improvement work, for which we've got £25,000 allocated this year. But I can say a bit more about that in a moment, but one thing that has become clear is that we aren't going to be able to get all of that work done this year. It's not going to happen. For a variety of reasons that I would explain. So I think we could reallocate some of that, and then in next year's budget, make up the difference. Yeah. That would be my proposal.
Where are we grant-wise on this?
Well, I was just going to ask John, well, that I'll come on the other point, but we were talking about the community board at one stage, weren't we? Maybe a grant of some sort.
We were, and I think there's a good chance we would get funding from the community board, but it is only that, it's not guaranteed.
We'll assume not,
So
So
if we get it, it will come back into
But
reserve.
we're still going to go for it then.
Well, I think we have to make a decision whether we're prepared to spend that amount of money, even if we don't get assistance. That's the
I mean, again, personally, I'm going to throw it open that we spent an awful lot of time on this, and more than I have, but the people who spend a lot of time on this, and we've been discussing the Stockwell, as they call it, for, I would say, 3, 4, 5 years. It is a wonderful asset of the village in terms of heritage, and I know, John, you've been highlighting that significantly, of late particularly. If we're really serious about looking after the village, that includes looking after the heritage sites for everyone to enjoy.
Right behind your head for the.
Well, yeah, in fact, yeah. I don't know if I can relay camera, but
I don't think I'll be able to see that very well.
Yeah.
This is John Howard when he was. Remember that. But it's an integral part of who we are. Yeah. And when we think that we have the money available in the budget, we can make it happen, and we make it a grant later on that will come back to us. Why wouldn't we invest in our village like that? Is my view.
Could I just make one small point on the grant? We have put an application, and as you say, we can't guarantee, but we are, awaiting an outcome on that, which I would hope it was all, according to Elaine, slightly delayed because of the election and so forth. But there will be the opportunity to look at alternative grants, heritage grants as well, if the community board. But I think certainly, I wouldn't want to make any further commitment than that, but I think we would have heard already if what we proposed was completely out of court. And we did look quite carefully at other similar sorts of projects that were, have been accepted and given financial support on a 50/50 matching basis. But as you say, we can't guarantee it. Should we not get that, that all is not necessarily lost. We can have a look at something else. But at the minute, we put all our eggs in that community board basket. Hopefully we'll get soon.
So, any other thoughts, or we're putting the proposal to a show of hands. Are we prepared to support this with the 16K and the good hands of those who are operating? Yeah, in favour?
Yep.
Great. Thanks, John. Brilliant.
That's all. Very speedily turned around the email program.
One of many that seem to come in late in the afternoon.
Good old Excel.
Yes. So, any other officer reports? Don't think so. Well, hang on. Sorry. What?
I was going to say, I had something to mention on the pilot scheme, didn't you have to do that
On
and the pilot, the traffic pilot scheme last week.
Can we do that on
Do
the?
it at the end.
Yeah.
There's no any other business, so I didn't really want to mention it.
I just
Items for information, for some reason, they call it items for information at AOB.
Can I wonder if it's appropriate to take the point 12 with point 10 and ask Anthony if he's happy to. I've got the emails in front of me, but it might be useful for the footpath officer to comment on where we are with the suggestion that Andy White came when he circulated this to everybody, with the 2 footpaths, one.
I didn't see, I saw what you said about the 2 foot road.
Yeah,
I see
it's
that.
an attachment. Does everyone else get it? Yeah.
No.
Effectively, well, Anthony.
Well, one's on the Winchton Road, one's on the Cunnington. And it's put a path down on the side of the road, and his suggestion was, so it would link up with the footpath going into Adamsfield on the Cunnington Road and link up with the bulk on the Winchton Road. That was a suggestion.
Yeah, so I thought made really good sense.
Well, it's good sense because you get circular walks and things like that.
Yeah.
It's, when you walk up that road, it's quite dangerous.
Yeah.
So that was a suggestion, and I think we've got the trail of emails, because the only person I had contact with is the rights of way officer, Bucks County Council, Alistair, who I emailed, And eventually today, he came back to me and the rest is all.
He came back at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
He was on way last week. But John knows more about this sort of thing than I do, but it's not something that the rights of way people do. It's down to highways. And highways involves a lot more that John knows about the grants and things like that you have to get to do that. I mean, the idea I think is really good because it would be a great asset to go walk down the road safely. But it's how we get it done.
Would it be worth me, because this only came in today, would it be worth, I mean, John, you've had a copy, I've had a copy, because it now potentially was involving the boards, the community boards. Would it be worth me circulating this to the councillors so they can get up to speed with what's been said? Take it forward to the next meeting, when maybe by then we've got a bit more information and thinking around whether we can do it, what it entails, how much the cost may be. Because as you say, they're pushing the cost sort of either community board way or parish council way.
Well, I think John was saying it might jeopardise some other stuff that we want to do.
Well, I think, yeah, we need to be a bit circumspect. As John was saying, we've got an application in for stopper funding. We've got a big application in for HCI junction funding. And I can imagine somebody saying, hey, how much of our money does Chearsley want?
All of it. Sorry, well, almost all.
But there's a bit more than that because the email talked about feasibility studies and they come in expensively. And I did put in a call this afternoon to John Payton, who's a contact I established in TFB, to ask him how that would work as regards some footpath work. But unfortunately, he's not come back to me. So again, I think that's reason to pick up your suggestion that we examine this a bit more closely and then take a big next time round.
Yeah, okay.
Perhaps I've just Rachel thing that haven't both of them to make absolute perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's
Yeah.
So it connects.
Yeah.
So
I'll circulate, so we need to circulate sorry, Anthony, would you mind circulating to us? Because it's written to you.
Well, that email.
Yeah. Is that right? If you can send it out to us. Well, I could do, but I'm delegating. Do you want me to send it out? Yeah. Okay. I'll send it out. Send it out.
PCT.
PCT, yeah.
PCT.
PCT. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a new,
I know, I can't keep up with all of this.
yeah, I know.
Anyway, another story about council. Okay, have a read, see what you think. Let's see if we can sort of get some other thoughts before the next meeting. Which I guess will be around what in terms of actions, John? Getting a view from community board, or what your thoughts are at community board, whether we can get anything through highways.
I think we need to investigate a bit more closely what the associated costs might be. These feasibility studies from TFP seem to add enormously to the cost of everything.
I met Colin with the road over there, asked him about it, and he said basically you have to pay, then do a survey, you probably know all this.
Yes, that's right.
So that's probably a few thousand quid.
Yeah.
So that's a-
Well, we quoted 3,000 for the feasibility study for the Stockholm curb. It's just
This
ridiculous.
is absolutely crazy. And there's no way around that.
Not that I'm aware. What I would say, the question I want to ask John is, this is going back to the HCI stuff again, but the design work for a major project includes what they call some initial design work, which of course is useful because it's got to be done. It's just, it takes you so far down the design and then you stop and see whether the whole thing looks feasible. And I want to understand the difference between that and a feasibility study, or are they one and the same, such that if it's initial design by another name, then it's useful because it's got to be done eventually, one way or another. If it's additional and then somebody goes away and starts designing from scratch, then I'll be less happy with it. And it's just something I want to understand a bit better, so we can.
I wonder whether it's,
informed.
I wonder whether it's worth me just having an off the record chat with Steve Gorman, who's heading up Highways now at Cabinet, and saying over coffee, you know, come over to the gateway and say, look, this is what we're trying to do. Just give me the truth. You know, is there feasibility needed? Can we get funding? Do we have to pay for it ourselves? And just try and get a very simple response to at least give us a steer. Because what I don't want us doing, or any of us want to do, is suddenly we get sent down all these highways and byways and lanes and no entries because they're sort of almost pushing us in directions that we don't want to go, just to sort of put it in the long grass. So maybe I could just
Makes sense.
to have a conversation with a councillor friend, associate, just to get some basic steer.
I think that would be useful.
Yeah, okay. And then we'll park it for us in the long grass until the next meeting, see how we progress. I mean, it's the sort of thing I think would be lovely to be done this summer, but there's not a cat and health chance. But you're right, Paul, it just links us up. It makes our access and it's so much better for so many people. Okay, thanks, Anthony. Have you got anything else at all on that matter, footpaths or anything?
Not particularly.
Anything happening with the gates and Simon Vickers?
Yeah, the Ramwood people came back to me today,
Okay,
to say he wants to, because I want to meet with him to discuss how we're going to do it. And because they're now back up and running and they've got capacity
right.
to do it. So I was going to meet him on Wednesday, but unfortunately I can't do it Wednesday, so hopefully Thursday.
Okay,
And we're going to have a look at them and he will suggest the best thing to do. And then he'll let us know how much it's going to cost.
okay. So just take that one forward, Helen, I think. So
So that was
the
like
two
your
gates
final
and
things regarding,
No, to the Ramwood people who install the gates.
Simon Vickers' field on his house.
On his ground.
Okay,
just like to Ram's Association, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
brilliant. Thanks, Anthony. Tree and birds matters. Paul?
Well, Ian's now the master.
So it's brackets, IH brackets.
Yeah. The only thing I've noticed, like from the planned mowing of the verges, which I think they have already started on, was thanks to Robert pointing out a tree was down across its path
Yeah.
Friday last week. And I went down to have a look at it Friday evening, and Alan Byrne out of his son, Fergus, had already got started on it with a chainsaw, and I helped them remove some of the damaged material to the end of its path, and Paul is going to come and move it on.
I will need to assistance actually, I haven't looked this afternoon, it's quite a lot.
Yeah, it is quite a lot.
Because I don't would.
So, no, it's all going on fire at the bottom of my paddock, just so that someone can complain that the smoke could be into the village, but it does need to go down there. So there's news quite a lot there, so I might set a note
about 8 inches in diameter, absolutely covered in ivy and an elderberry tree. And it was absolutely rotten, and it just snapped off right across the path. And we've got quite a few examples of those sorts of trees carrying a lot of ivy, and they can be dangerous. So we need to keep an eye on them.
I think like the ones we cut down in Church Lane, two have gone across the trees in the snowstorms, and they do get to a certain size, and then they've had it basically, and they just you can push them over.
Yeah.
So I think it's something we do need to be aware of.
Yeah, quite.
Cool. Okay, thank you very much, Ian, for all that ongoing work. We picked up the 2-foot-pass at Chearsley. Adoption of the agreed work plan, John.
So this is just a small item really, just to round off the discussion we had at the last meeting. We have developed the work plan, which is an attempt to make sure that for all the things that we decide to do, we've got a name next to them to make sure they get done, at least to improve the chances of them getting done, including spending the money that's allocated to them so that we don't end up the year with saying we haven't managed to spend anything, which would not be desirable. We had a subgroup meeting, most people were there, I think, I can't remember exactly who was and wasn't, but most of us were there. It was agreed, distributed the document, not had any comments back, so I think we can just take that as an agreed document. It's a working document really, so I'm not sure the extent to which we need to formally approve it, but it's not a bad idea to put on record that we've got it.
Which draft is that?
Draft 3.
Because draft 3 is still showing, oh no, sorry, no, I think I looked at the wrong one. No, that's fine, yeah. Bring that, yeah.
Okay, so all those in favour of adoption of the work plan 21-22, raise their hand. Thank you very much, unanimous. Can I just ask, John, do all our officers get this plan as well? Right.
Yeah, I think everybody got it.
Do you get it?
Yes, because everybody's got it.
Everybody's got it.
Yeah.
In fact, what I did was
See many things around to it.
no, he kept saying he's the parts officer.
Technically, he's got a technical officer. Mark
I
Gibbs.
think we've got Kurt right next to footpaths.
That's true, we have, yes. What I do propose to do, actually, there are 1 or 2 names of volunteers on this as well, that I haven't sent it to, so with everybody's agreement, I thought I would send it out to everybody whose name appears on the back page.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So I'll raise it to full issue 1 and send it out to the world at large.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Okay, so, progress on new officer appointments.
So that's in a sense linked to the work plan. Again, we're aware that there are 2 folk who volunteered to come and join us as officers, but the challenge was working out not such a challenge, but the task was working out what they would do for us. So having agreed this work plan, I sent it out to both of them just before I went on holiday a week ago and said, here you go, this is the plan. What do you fancy out of this? Or have you got any other thoughts and things you'd like to get on with? Or do you just want to be an extra pair of hands that's around as and when needed? So I gave them full options. I've heard back from one of them saying, yeah, looks interesting, let's have a chat. Still waiting to hear from the other. So I'm not naming names for the time being. Everyone knows who they are around this table. And I'll go and have that conversation. If anybody else would like to join me in that conversation, more than happy. And see what agreements we can come to.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Brilliant. You're on again. HCI Junction project, approval expenditure.
Right, so this is the one where I'm going to rattle on for a few minutes. The HCI Junction work, we're all very familiar with what we're trying to achieve there, and we've talked before about the application we made for funding assistance with the project. The feedback I've had since I think you may remember at our last meeting that I mentioned I've had an email that afternoon talking about £9,000 for some design work, and I wasn't sure what it was all about. Having investigated that, what I've now established is that there are a couple of strands to this. There's can we get funding assistance from the community board? Is strand 1. And strand 2 is the level of TFB involvement and when they get involved and how they get involved. And it turned out that, at least I was expecting, and I think Elaine was expecting, Elaine at the community board, that having pushed this thing to TFB initially, the purpose of that was for them to come up with some budgetary estimate that would enable the community board to give a view on funding. That's what I was expecting. That isn't what happened. What came back was this 9,000 figure, which I'll come back to in a moment, for just one little part of the work. And TFB saying, let us know whether you want us to proceed. Well, when I put that to Elaine, we ended up with a conversation that said effectively that the community board needs to know the cost, but TFB needs to know whether we want to go ahead before they give us a cost. So we got into this stupid loop. It's a process that clearly needs some attention, councillor.
Well, I will work with the chairman of the new first strategy group on this matter.
But that's aside. I did two things. One, I made contact, again, hopefully through Elaine, with a chap called John Payton at TFB. And he gave me a very good explanation of the process from TFB's point of view. And he explained that there are 4 stages to a major project like this. There's what they call the initial design, which, as I mentioned earlier on, isn't a lot more than a feasibility study. It takes design work so far, just enough to decide whether it's worth proceeding. Then there's detailed design, which picks up from the initial design, obviously, and it works out exactly how the thing's going to look. So I said there's 4 stages, that's why I paused, I think it was 3 stages. And then the final stage is the implementation work, actually doing the job. It's possible to flex some aspects of the design work between the detailed design and the initial design. There's not a hard cut-off, you could flex things around between the two. And the £9,000 that they mentioned, that I mentioned at the last meeting, was to do initial design for 3 options. 3 of the options that we had received from our consultants. I explained to John that, thank you, but we don't need design for 3 options to it because we know what we want. And we certainly don't need one of them, which was a mini roundabout, which I explained isn't going to happen in Chearsley. Not so far as I understand his intentions anyway. So after a conversation with him, he agreed that it would probably be possible to do the initial design work, depending on this flexing as to what gets done, for the main option that we want studied for about £6,000. He couldn't go any further than that in terms of what the ultimate cost would be. Park that just for a moment and come back to the other strand, which is community board approval. Because of this sort of impasse, I've agreed through Elaine with the community board that I will go in front of the transport committee, which is the recommending committee for these grants, which meets at the end of the month, the end of June, approximately. I haven't got a firm date yet, to seek a preliminary view from them as to how sympathetic they're likely to be, based on the cost estimates that I'm able to give them from the study estimates that we get. That's somewhere in the region of 100 to 120,000 all told. I don't know how far that's going to take us. I don't know what sort of hearing I'm going to get, whether they're going to show me the door or be sympathetic or ask for more information. But at least I've sort of nudged a way forward on that side of the equation. Now, as part of that submission, I'd like to be in a position to say that the parish council is definitely prepared to put some funding into this. Now, we've already agreed to £5,000 funding to the overall project.
Less the stock.
Maybe that. What I'm going to propose, one little bit of information I need to explain. The way that TFB work, we can get them to do work either by routing the request via the community board, or by going directly to TFB ourselves. If it's routed via the community, if we are going to seek some grant funding from the community board, then it's the community board that we commission TFB to do the work. If we're not going to seek grant funding, then we can commission TFB ourselves directly under the TFB contract. It wouldn't be a separate contract between us and TFB, it's under their main contract with Bucks Council. So in order to be able to demonstrate to the Transport Committee that we're committed to this, and in order to move the thing forward, and recognising that we've already suggested that we will contribute £25,000, my recommendation to the committee, to the council, is that we agree to pay that £6,000 estimated expenditure ourselves for the initial design work, as part of the 25,000 that we've already said we would pay towards the project. That enables me to commission TFB to do the work directly and to tell the Transport Committee that that's what we've done as a demonstration of our commitment to this project. The downside, of course, is that it proves impossible for one reason or another for the project to go ahead, in which case we spend £6,000 for nothing.
Is there any downside of not doing that via the community board? You said that as an option, you won't go direct to TFB, and you go to the community board and then go to TFB.
Yes.
What's the downside? Is there a potential downside of not going to the community board en route? Or if I missed it, someone.
Well, not going to the community board is the same as us going directly.
Yeah.
The downside to that, as I say, is that we spend £6,000 for nothing.
But if we went to the community board and said we'll spend it anyway,
If we go to the community board, then we would, the only reason for doing that really is if we're going to try and get a grant contribution towards the 6,000. It would be a two-stage
don't
application.
go to them and say we're doing this, we're going to pay this first bit, but here's the down payment.
Oh, I see. No, if we're going to pay it, then there's no point in bothering. They just add an extra step into the thing.
Okay.
See, I could phone TFB tomorrow and say to John, hey,
It doesn't, sorry.
we're going to do this. That's very simply the formula for it.
The alternative is we pay up front, get the study done, that gets a harder estimate of cost.
Yes, I believe as part of our commissioning of TFB for the initial design, I could say to them, as part of that,
Because
I
that's
would like an
key.
estimate.
That's key, because then you go back to the community board with a fixed, with a more certain cost, then we're asking for the grant one, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, they come back and say,
So the point I was making
£500,000.
is there any benefit then knowing that we're doing that? In other words, this is where our level of commitment is, we're putting the 6,000 up ourselves, we'll do it directly to the TFB to alert them of what we're doing, so they know the step two is asking for some money.
Yes, I mean, that will be part of the conversation I would have with them when I go and see them at the end of the month.
It's interesting this. I mean, the more we get into major decisions, which I think we've sort of been making now for a couple of years, or a vision of major decisions, you get eventually into this dichotomy of a scenario where we've either got to put up or shut up almost. We have to, if we're really serious about this, just like a software, we've got to find the money, get on and do it. And I personally, having talked a bit with John about this, think that, again, although that's spending £6,000, it moves us along and starts to get us to where we want to get to.
Well, the
Those are hard
alternative,
decisions.
the alternative, you go to the community board sort of twice, which
Yeah.
I think muddies things a little bit, and also delays it. And we've already invested in the initial study. How much was that?
That costs us about 4,000 with a further 4,000 from the.
Oh, we got that back.
We got that.
Contribution.
We got it.
Yeah, we paid for ourselves, and there was a further 4 we got back.
I mean, I think, I'm in favour of going forward in the sort of faster mode and spending the 6,000, because I think when we go for the grant, assuming
It demonstrates
it demonstrates commitment, but also, you know, we can roll it up as part of the overall cost anyway.
Yeah.
Which I think, I mean, we need a figure. We do. We need a plan, we need to know it's feasible. So we've come this far, so we have to, I think all of us feel, you know, that we need to get to a decision, but we need to try and push as hard as we can to get to a decision, you know, a clear feasibility plan and cost, and then we go, that's a springboard to then hopefully get it done.
I mean, I think it's an unsatisfactory situation. We're faced with this choice, really. And for me, it demonstrates a broken process between the way the community law and TFP are working together. But it's all we're faced with at the moment, as far as I know.
And I'm sure you'll take that up.
as time goes on.
I'm sure Councillor Brown will take that.
Well, I said to John,
It's a separate tax.
we can mend this as we go along, but currently there are so many issues that need mending, let me tell you. It takes time, you know, that whatever you think about past performances with ABDC, now defunct, and planning and all sorts of things, you know, there's been some great work done by the councils, ABDC, Muxcan, you know, but moving forward, there's a lot to sort out and get right. This is going to happen overnight. So that's why it's key to having people. You guys have been talking to some of the senior players, and never mind Chearsley, you can make a huge difference elsewhere. But it is frustrating sometimes, and I agree with you. You sort of feel like, oh, it doesn't quite have to be like this. It's not very joined up. So the proposal is, are we committing to the 6K so John can get on and move things forward?
Well, I support that.
All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We trust in you. Very quickly, I think what I'll do is I'll circulate this. I meant to do this and didn't do it, but I spoke to Ken True from Cullington, who was the architect guru, if you like, for Cullington. Pretty much single-handedly produced the neighbourhood plan for Cullington. And just posed a question to him again, and just said, look, is this really worth doing these days, Ken? Because he's still very much in connection with planning all over the place. He sent me a note back, and I'll pass it out to you for your thoughts, and maybe we'll bring it to the next parish council meeting, Helen. But the summary of it basically was, he said, you know, options. Well, he said there remains a threat from developers looking for small rural sites. I'm not convinced that you need a full neighbourhood plan to manage this. And the options A, B, and C: do nothing. A passive approach may give the impression the community doesn't have any views on development. B, do the minimum. I think the minimum is to produce a small report, update the village plan, setting out the general approach to development and defining a settlement boundary map. If necessary, this would go to informal consultation to give it a bit more authority. And C, an interim plan, as B, would also collect the baseline environmental and planning data needed for a neighbourhood plan. I don't think a full neighbourhood plan is needed or worth the effort. And that was...
Sorry, is that you saying that? Was that what?
That's Ken. Yeah. And that was reinforced with the conversation I had with a couple of planning people at the go, who, off the record, talked to me about their views about this. And so let me circulate it to you. So you've got his comments, and I did try and contact Ken again to sort of qualify a couple of things, but he'll call me back.
A lot of this might depend on what's happening with the new bill going through Parliament, or not going through Parliament. Because clearly, there is so much opposition, I can see the whole thing getting thrown out.
Yeah.
It might be another approach needs to be-
We have a serious amount of issues currently we're looking at.
I think we can almost park this one for a couple of months and see how that pans out first.
I'll circulate it, we'll put it on the next agenda, and maybe at that point, Paul, take that view to see how things
I think so.
Okay,
So that was that. Parishioners' question time.
I've just got one item of feedback. It's from Nick Babington.
I
Saying
saw
we just
that.
can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah. Sorry, Tim. Tony.
You've responded, so I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just good. I think it's a fact of life. There's echoes. I mean, you can't. It's not that clear listening to someone across the room. So something can be picked up on a mic and go over the air. It doesn't surprise me. So yeah, sorry for that. If it's still there.
Well, hopefully your budget will help us out.
Yeah, get the mixing desk.
I think it's just be so
DJ
difficult though, with an echo room. It's the acoustics aren't great to start with.
I mean, John and I did listen to the replay, and it's not great, but you know, turn the volume up, or I could hear what was being said.
Okay.
But we can improve it.
Okay. Items for information. Ian? Any other? Angela, you had one?
Yeah, just about the pilot, you asked me, for the pilot developed services, the pilot started in April, unfortunately, so by the time I picked up, they'd already started it, so there's not another opportunity to go into it for next year.
Let's put on the agenda for December or something.
Yeah, good idea. So let's take that devolved pilot scheme. Keep
It's
it.
nice of them to ask us and say there's one, rather than having to try and find it.
There's a lot of things going on at the minute, which I don't know why I haven't asked.
Is it possible, Angela, to get any details of the pilot and what sort of devolved monies are involved and responsibilities, so everybody be informed for the future?
And actually, the other thing I think probably I'm leading on from that and comment there. Angela, I don't know whether this would be a conflict, but could we get informed? Is there a timetable of things going on at that level that would inform us of what was happening in the next month or two?
That's what I was saying, yeah, that would be very useful.
I don't know,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Put an advance notice before it passes us by.
Well, these things should be formally sent out.
It was
Well,
what we said, so
yeah,
by
yeah.
the time I was sent the
Yeah,
email,
but it didn't come to the parish council.
it did, yeah, it came.
I think
March,
it's
February,
on
March,
the through the gaps and
February,
picked
March,
it up a
it
bit
came to
later.
May.
Okay.
So we didn't pick it up.
So
Okay,
it did come,
all right.
but it was just, yeah.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Paul?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 points actually, very quick ones which you probably answered, but what happened with the bell on the community asset? Progress on that, did that get resolved and finished?
Yeah, we discussed that earlier, so,
Oh, you weren't here, Robert?
Oh, sorry.
yes, so we've resubmitted,
Yeah.
we've sent a letter saying that they'll let us know within 8
Okay,
weeks.
so
That's
nothing's
said.
happened in the course of this meeting.
I think I'm hoping it's going to be.
I mean,
favourable.
it's a very strange response, I have to say,
Yeah.
most peculiar,
Yeah.
but, okay.
They had their attention.
Right, secondly, I think I'd just like to pass on congratulations to Long Brennan on getting their planning for the surgery. I
Oh, has
think.
that come through?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great news
Oh,
for
brilliant.
the, for the whole.
I was going to bring that up.
I'm
Yeah.
sure those people that live down the opposite, the old one, are going to feel much relieved as well. They won't have people parking and.
The issue though now is funding, and that's the next stage. So they're working on the finalisation of the business plan. And Cameron, my colleague from Long Brennan, is very heavily involved. He's on the committee. He would have been here tonight. He's tied up with something to do with this. We have got to get a spade in the ground by November latest. We understand that is good enough as spade in the ground with us. But we got to get political health and one or two players in line and sorted so that we can get that moving. But otherwise the land reverts to the landowner.
Oh, really?
And so it's really important, but there's some brilliant minds on it, really great efforts, and fingers crossed, I think, should help.
Good. The other one I was going to just raise was the question of security with the various things that have been going on with, I'm sure you've got this anyways, any other business for Graham's equipment, that I just think we're going to need to look again at the CCTV.
Yeah.
Or not look again, but, start to look seriously at it. We clearly are some issues around, the whole area at the moment, stuff's getting finished, and whilst CCTV isn't, it's not something I personally wanted to see, but I have a feeling.
Well,
it's
my
getting-
views over 4 or 5 years on this, and I almost felt it was coming.
Yeah.
And it's now landed.
It's very sad.
Very sad.
But, what's going on at the moment is obviously very unsatisfactory, and, in our stalker here,
I mentioned news of our 2 PCOs have released something in the green, they were asking about. Oh, you saw them? The new last was enjoying this, was lovely.
I thought we were very persistent, 10 out of 10. Just showed you the extent that parish councillors go after to protect the parishioners. I mean, anyone that's still left listening, please note.
I think that,
Very serious point.
they're very impressed. I mean, Danny came over and he introduced, well, I met her last week, but the new PCO, a lady called China, spelled Chyna, the young lass about to celebrate her 21st birthday from Liverpool. Absolutely dynamite, lovely lady. And they're all over it, and they were saying they couldn't believe, what we've been doing as individuals or groups about these no entry signs, that he's actually seen youngsters at 11:30 at night bashing into them and taking photographs of each other. So we're on that as well. I didn't update you, John.
This is small price from someone from Liverpool, is it?
Well, possibly not. Take that one back. But yeah, so I think CCTV, we've got to get our acts together. And I know you're dealing with some folks. I mean, I've still been working with the UK Security Group in Long Crandon. And actually, it was their camera on the apex of the tennis club. As you go into Long Crandon Tennis Club on your left, if you look at the apex of the building, there's a white camera. You can hardly see it. It's very, it just, you don't really notice it, but it was the camera that took a picture of what we believe was the driver of the motor car that's involved in my theft of my vehicle. So that's ongoing. But you just wouldn't see it really. So, and he reckoned that you could get 3 or 4 of those on various locations rather than bloody red pole in the area of the Horse Chestnut, covering all the junctions on a 24-hour monitoring system. So if you want to again speak to Paul, he's happy to get involved with the program. I just think the time has come to do something about this.
I think another place to consider would be the Rocklands. We've had 2 recent rentals there in the last 2 or 3 years.
I think we can afford that. The only problem with that, Ian, is it's a nice to have.
Yeah.
This is absolutely terrible because it's not just thefts or banging into no entry sign. It's vehicle movement.
And then the whole church roof as well,
Yeah. So I think, I don't know whether you're happy to keep cranking that up or whether I can get a meeting between us and security.
No, I think so. I pursued some quotes at the village hall.
Yeah.
I've also just today ordered 3 Amazon Blink cameras because they're on offer, Amazon Prime there today and tomorrow. To invest, look at them, maybe fit them on my own property to sort of get a feel. And Lazarek has got 3 of them on the cricket club, and he's been showing me through. So they're a very cheap solution. But I think, if we were going to use them as an alternative, they'd probably have to be on individual properties, etc.
People will, there are people
And then,
who give permission.
But I think the professionally monitored CCTV, as long as it's of a sufficient standard, that sort of gets past the, the potential data protection GDPR because it's all legally signed off. Whereas technically, you're not meant to have CCTV going out,
Sure.
onto public places from your own property, technically.
I've had CCTV on the cottages ever since they were renovated, refurbished. And I go with another company, private company over towards Milton Keynes. And they've been superb, the quality of the... Sorry?
Oak Park.
Who?
Oak Park.
No. The quality of the pictures and the recordings are just stunning. As a consequence of having my own vehicle stolen, now you'll notice on the in the study, the brick saying in green, I've had one tucked away in the corner, so I can now monitor just outside on the road. And as a courtesy, they spoke to Adam, although it doesn't encroach upon his house, but he was absolutely supportive of it. But it gives me full coverage now outside the parking area.
You're allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Go from inside to out?
Yeah, it's all been, all been licensed and authorised. Because I was so incensed about what happened, but it can be done. You've got to follow the protocols and the licensing and everything else, but it can be done. And the quality of the stuff I managed to get, they stayed away, by the way, by the green, is still being used. So, forget me, I just think Chearsley would benefit security-wise from having that. I mean, you could even go back, I think my system, actually, I can go back a month, and I get 4 calls. So it's all there on the data, and it's the only thing I now have to spend some money because the data's trying to catch up because there's so much going on with the cameras, you know. And that's something
I mean, I put mine on Riverview 5 years ago, and my cable had used it to try and find out who was going, attacking the sheep.
Yeah.
It's improved so much over 5 years, but even then, it was, it's very clear. You've got, number plate recognition and everything else, which is very, very useful. So I think it's a very good move.
So how do we take this forward, Kid? Are you happy to continue doing this, or?
Yeah, I think so. We need to pull our resources a little bit, get, I wasn't aware of your system, for example, Paul's system. So I think we need to make sure we've got best knowledge in the village, what's current sort of costs. Because we can also encourage people are wandering up people's driveways throughout the village, which is what sounds like it's happening. I think we should encourage people to fit their own sort of cheap devices there, because we need to tackle this collectively amongst all properties as well as the main central areas, which we can deal with as a parish. But it seems, people under the guise of being delivery.
No, absolutely.
Delivery drivers can drive white vans anyway and get sort of wander up people's drive delivering packages, and then they've got to steal stuff as well. So.
Can I just say that I think we had that broadcast from during the parish council meeting during.
Yes.
I think if we're dealing with this, it's going to be very separate to the parish council meeting. It's going to be a completely separate meeting purely for CCTV and not part of one of these meetings. I think it's
too for privacy.
No, I just think it's too complex. It's too involved. It just needs these volunteers that might want to be part of that group to take it forward.
So rather than giving the burden on to Keith, is it about how we might?
No, what I was going to say was, and it sort of picks up on what I was saying there, Paul. Personally, I'm very sad that you're going to do this. Without some of the recent events, I would have been saying no. It's, I can't argue against what's being proposed. It just doesn't make sense. But there's going to be a lot of other people in the village feel the same way. And I think that if we're going to do this for the public areas, yours is the parish council, we need to make sure we're taking the village with us, which implies a village information campaign before we make further decisions.
Oh, yes,
I agree.
And that might be linked with what you were saying more about a separate meeting, maybe a public meeting on the subject.
It's almost not a parish council matter in a way. It's a parish matter.
I'm happy, as you say, to pick up with Paul and just suggest, just to kick things off, that he came up and looked at these 4 separate cameras at a la the tennis club. Where would he put them? What do we need to do? A rough cost just to get things moving.
I mean, we could even have a village Zoom meeting, if we wanted to present it, well, depending if we're all freed up by the 19th of July, we can actually have
Can you put me down as James, it's actually his son who runs it, but James Davies from the UK Security Group. They're the ones who got the cameras, for instance, on the River Crossing by the Indian restaurant and the shop. And they've provided there's so much information about things that happen on that crossing.
Sorry, Nick, you're going to contact UK Security Group
Yeah,
about speaking to them with regards to.
Yeah, just to kick things off,
Yes.
with the stuff you're looking at, just to get the debate going, I agree, an education piece and a Zoom call or a meeting.
And if they should come over and do a site inspection, I'd,
Yeah.
I'd look to try and make myself available.
Okay.
Because I want to learn about this.
I'll get
as much
Keith
as
involved
possible.
as well, so I'll take that on and get that moving.
I'll mention it to our two prospective officers as well.
Yeah.
So people of those interested.
Absolutely.
get involved.
Yeah, because that's
Okay.
a key project to get agreement and then move forward as quickly as possible.
All right. On that basis, I did, with a couple of people there this morning, but I'm suggesting the sort of loosely the lawnmower men between us are suggesting that we should try and help Graham with his costs. He's looking at 500 or 600 quid worth of loss, problems with insurance, and actually he doesn't think he's going to get it anyway because it was close to his van, and they're saying should have taken care of it, his premiums and everything else, but he doesn't know about this. I just found that out in conversation with him this morning, saying I'm really sorry to hear what happened. We've got this fund going, at the moment we're all contributing a few quid into it. You guys will be aware because you're in the loop and everything. I'm asking if the parish council would contribute 50 quid towards that pot for him, and the idea is we'll go around with the cards and say, we're really sorry what happened to you, we really value what you do in this village, and here's a contribution from the village to support you going forwards. Funny enough, I was with Nick Reynolds today at his place on the planning thing, and he immediately got his wallet out and gave him 25 quid, which I thought was really nice. So if you're happy to approve that, 50 quid with a show of hands,
Yeah,
I think that's a great gesture, so we'll get that moving.
And perhaps, probably not for an open meeting, I was going to say, just show an arrangement for people who want to drop off some cash somewhere.
Yeah, so we're going to share it with there's other people who have actually come up and said, forget law, we just like to contribute as well,
Yeah.
so I think it's pretty good.
So we just need to know where they're going.
Yeah, I'll send it, Ian Algebra is sending, he sends his bank account details out, so I can forward those on if you want to contribute. So,
So when he gets his new tractor, we know he's worked very well.
He comes with his shining machine, he knows Okay, thanks. John, any answers?
Nothing for me.
Kat, please.
I think we all saw it, but I think a lot of the villagers would be most interested in hearing that the Aylesbury Cunnington Road is due to be repaired
Yeah.
August 23rd to
Yeah.
25th. So I was thinking, as well as it getting in minutes or whatever, I should put that
Sure.
on the
You
blog.
also need to put Dark Lane in.
Yeah, well, I did that as well, but yeah.
Sorry, can I just chip into that? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right, Keith. So will you do that? I mean, I'm very happy to put a note together.
Oh, great, you
Can you do that,
You want to
John?
write it on post?
I mean, what intrigued me about it is that the, Aylesbury Road is 2 days, and that's plain and patch.
Yeah.
But Dark Lane is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Did
A
you
bit
notice
worrying, isn't it?
I think,
I don't know whether that's just flexibility of dates, but
I think that would be a window they're giving themselves.
Yes.
I just asked
because I mean, I know when they do Dark Lane, that will be a major
yeah.
issue. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that we sent out our documents on the stop work, because there will be works.
Yeah.
And I remember the last time that we had some, they did research for World War III for a village. So we do need to keep on top of the council to give us, and probably Wolford in particular, to give us adequate. I think the Aylesbury Road should be relatively straightforward, but Dark Lane could actually be quite.
I can't
I
remember.
suppose that big machine just goes
Oh,
across, strips it
goes.
all off, and then they just
Yeah.
put the tar.
But it's 2 days, but I think the Dark Lane.
Well, it's probably 3 days inclusive, isn't it, 23rd to the 25th?
Yeah. But I think the Dark Lane one will be more challenging. I know we were, there was quite a lot of reaction on some of the drainage works, which was done in Church Lane.
That's true.
Again, we weren't given advance notice.
No,
I have heard as well this morning that thanks John for getting the potholes on outside the pub area, Has that been marked? I have no ready to
Yeah,
go.
marking doesn't always guarantee.
No,
It does, it's in the past.
They've got a pretty white line around them.
No, but I did hear this morning that possibly that whole area, and actually up by me as well, is scheduled to be researched completely in March, April next year. But I haven't had that confirmation, I've just had that from the verbal conversation. If all this happens, I mean, well, the main thing is the Coventry Road.
Absolutely.
Jesus, then just get that right for now, but it worries me, as you say, a bit about the timing, but also have they still not talked to Thames Water? Because we still have more seepage.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
Colin Wolford told us that, you know, they're on it.
Okay.
Cool.
And they're not.
Nick, I just saw one particular item really close at home. The hedge here for the village hall really needs cutting back from the footpath, because if you're trying to walk over it, you've got to be.
Get 4 seasons to that, haven't
We've done it ourselves before now as part of our work, and the village has done it another year as part of their work, so I don't know, perhaps it's our turn. We could add it into the verges of the annual trim work.
they? Yeah, that's so.
It gets Tom Alden to it, but also the first 2 houses on the left here, that hedge is overgrown onto the footpath.
If we're doing that, can we not do the other stuff on Perry's side, just get on and be done with it? Because we're never going to get anything out.
It's not going to
I
do
don't think it's
The last time I saw it was something to go back, but
That's just going on this way.
I said,
I hear Paul might be that way with the business.
Max, really,
Yeah.
full season. Oh, right, okay.
So we need to see where we are with all that.
Okay. We've got a couple of other options.
Yeah. So hedgerows, village hall, pathways here, church piece, hedges. Let's just get on and get those bashed back.
Yeah, definitely.
Are we in agreement with that? Because
Yes.
that's probably going to be 500 quid or something, so,
And that's going to be promoted by 4 seasons, is it?
well, maybe.
probably Tom Audley will do it.
Tom Audley, all those in agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, Tom Audley coming and do the work and that sort of stuff.
Not Steve
No, if the village hall needs to put a contribution in for that bit, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nothing else. Okay.
John?
I should have spoken up earlier, but I just wanted to say that there's a number of, particularly John and Angela, the village came to a halt Wednesday before last. And we're on it. And we're also seeing Graham quite soon, I think in July, to talk it through. Because Angela very kindly volunteered to take on.
Sorry, what came to a wall?
The lorry.
Oh, that lorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
yeah.
Right, we thought it was a company called JRL, they've now said no, it wasn't them, somebody else who's based at Westcote Park.
Right.
Anyway, we're going to chase it, it's very important that we do.
Yeah.
And I would just like to
That was a serious.
say that what's so important is, I mean, we've got some good photographs.
Yeah.
But actually, if people are taking, if they do stuff, get your phones out, take a photograph. And if you can, get the registration plate. Get the registration plate, because that, these freight companies do have an ability to wriggle.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Registration.
Yeah, that's what we're there wriggling, sorting out of wriggling.
Yes, wriggle sorting.
But I mean, the good thing is that, with the work that we're doing with Graham, and there's incidents like this that just add fuel to the fire for our efforts to get things sorted out. I mean, I didn't see it personally, but it was something of the whole. We saw Dave Thomas did some very quality photographs. And apparently 2 guys in the cab, neither of them could speak English. Didn't, not that was a mortal sin, but didn't make the things easy.
Just stop it. Right, okay, thank you, John. Anthony, any additions? I've just got one addition to put, two. 24th of July is the village party. At the Bell, starting at 12 noon with the opening of the Wheel Out Bar and carrying on through the day entertaining children. I'm going to get a note out with Angela and Sharon. We need to speak to the mums and dads for commitments to donations of the teas and the coffees and the jellies and the ice creams for the kids.
So the change of government timetable doesn't impact on it at all?
Well, no, I'm assuming the 19th of July we're all rocking and rolling again.
Okay.
And until Boris tells me differently, we're sticking with it.
Except it's not the 19th.
And I've got a wonderful way to enter the new world, the first party.
So 19th was the day, the 24th is the day of the village day. Yeah.
So leading with a live band with spokes and a pig roast and everything. So this, yeah, I nailed it about 6 months ago. I've been trying to get it for 2 years, but it'll be their first gig for a year and a half. So they're really looking forward to it. I just couldn't nail that for France.
Cool, aren't they?
Yeah, they're doing John, bands and John Grace. Yeah. They passed us on the camel run. We left North Cornwall. They were coming down the camel.
Another camel extra.
Yeah. 24th, 7th, okay.
Yeah.
So party time. And the only other thing, I had an email from Greg. So let's see. If you're looking in, Greg, thanks for the email. That's Greg Smith MP, who asked me, are we raising the flag for Armed Forces Day? And have we got a flag for Armed Forces Day? And I said, I don't know, but I'll find out. And if we haven't got one, we'll
You
buy
can have
it.
a chat with his neighbour, actually.
Pardon?
Greg can have a chat with his neighbour.
Yeah.
Show him his collection. I think Martin built up a very important, impressive collection of flags.
But we don't know if we've got Armed Forces Day flag.
He had a lot. I can't remember offhand.
Yeah, apparently it is, but it's another flag that is specific to this. So with your permission, can I see if I can get one rapidly delivered?
Yeah.
Because it's the 24th or 25th of June or something. Armed Forces Services. But if everyone's in favour of getting the flag, raise their hand. I do. Not to do that. Yes, I get another big reaction thing to do. Okay, I won't go on that. That's fine, John. That's it. Good. So next Monday, 19th of June, the 19th of July.
Oh, big day.
7:30. God, I think they're just the stars are aligning for Chearsley. So 7:30 at the village hall, and that being the end of business, the meeting is now closed. Thanks for watching. I'm sorry if we can't quite hear us, you can't hear us, but we're working on it and we're going to improve all this. But by then, hopefully, we'll see more people in front of us in the morning. So thank you and good night.
I won't need it.
That's-